Oh god. I don't know that I have like the spoons for this. I just wanted to say really quick, really quick, okay? So Patrick Bet David, Anna Kasparian went on the Patrick Bet David show not that long ago, like a few days ago. And well, she's laughing along with them and talking about LGBTQ issues. There's like a 30-minute long segment where they talk about queer issues in the US, and she just kind of nods and laughs along as while talking about how the crazy far left extremists have taken things too far with the Patrick Bet David crew. And I just wanted to like really hammer home how like odious that was to me. Because Patrick Bet David is just straight up a homophobic bigot. And I can prove it because like a couple months ago, he put up a video called LGBTQ Movement Exposed, shocking history behind it. So let's go. I'm just going to go over one part of this video though. We're going to go over his section on history and who's behind it. Because again, there's like a 5-minute thing where he talks about polling and then he goes over Malcolm X for like several minutes for some godforsaken reason. So here we go. History.
So now let's take a look at history. When did this whole thing get started?
Oh my god, this video is so quiet.
The term homosexual. You know when it was? 1869. It was first coined by Hungarian journalist Karl Maria Kerthbeny. Then in 1897, the first known gay rights organization called the Scientific Humanitarian Committee is founded in Germany. 1924, Magnus Hirschfeld publishes The Transvestites, The Psychology of Sex Expression. This was one of the first scientific studies of transgender people. 1960.
And then nothing happened between 1924 and 1968. Scientific progress continued. Magnus Hirschfeld definitely wasn't targeted by the Nazis. Just skip over that. We're going to 1968. Okay.
68. Congressional proceedings reference gender identity that occurs in a report on public health service under the National Institute of Mental Health summary of sex deviates, which included gender identity disorder as a future direction for research. That's 19.
Now, maybe you're like, oh, Jack, you're being unfair. He's summarizing like the history of like LGBTQ stuff. Like, sure, yeah. Also, we're not going to mention Stonewall. I pre-watched this, by the way, because I wanted to make sure that it proved my point, and it does. So I can tell you guys, we're going places.
1968 under Lyndon Johnson, if you wonder who the president is. 1971, the first legal challenge to a state ban on same-sex marriage was filed in Minnesota. 1973, which by the way is only about 50 years ago if you think about it. Ready? The American Psychiatric Association removes homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. That means
I wonder what Patrick Bet David thinks of homosexuality as a mental illness.
In 1972, being homosexual was a mental disorder. This ain't 200 years ago, folks. This is just 50 years ago, when we, the health professions, used to think it was a mental disorder to be gay. 1973, it changed. 1974, the first gay pride marches are held in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. 1986, you ready for this one? Courts rule that there is no constitutional protection for sodomy. In Bowers versus Hardwick, ruling allows sodomy to continue being criminally prosecuted in states where laws prohibit homosexual activity. So why is this 1986? Because the AIDS epidemic was in June of 81, and people were worried about what was taking place. A lot of gay folks were getting AIDS because the whole concept of sodomy is what they're talking about. If you don't know what sodomy is, don't go Google it because some sites may come up. But that's kind of what caused this 1986.
He can't even say anal sex. He's like, I'm not even going to tell you what sodomy is. Which, by the way, sodomy also includes oral sex. So if you're straight and you've ever done oral sex, that's sodomy, bud.
Caused this 1986 ruling. 1987, the Supreme Court of the United States rules that sexual orientation is not a constitutionally protected class. This is 87, okay? How long ago was that? 35 years ago? 36 years ago? 1988. 1993 was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy prohibiting lesbians, gay, and bisexual people from coming.
Yeah. Any of you ever had, if any of you have ever had a blowjob, you're a sodomite. Just letting you guys know, okay?
Out or telling others about anything related to their sexual activity,
even if you're straight,
related to their sexuality is codified on this date. Same year, 1993, the Supreme Court of the United States rules that the Boy Scouts of America cannot discriminate against gays and lesbian scouts. 1994.
It is pretty wild to me that, like, in my lifetime, the Boy Scouts were literally kicking people out for being gay, like kicking children out of the Boy Scouts for like having a crush on another boy.
Year, the National Education Association, NEA, passes a resolution calling for the inclusion of LGBTQ topics in the curriculum. 1996, another interesting one. Congress passes the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, which defines marriage as between one man and one woman for federal purposes, signed by the one and only Bill Clinton. This was obviously a major setback for the same-sex marriage, but it was overturned in 2013. 2003, the Supreme Court of the United States rules that same-sex sexual activity is illegal in all 50 states. 2004, Massachusetts becomes the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. Do you want to know who the governor was? Republican Governor Mitt Romney. 2005, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network releases its first national school climate survey, which finds that LGBTQ students are disproportionately bullied and harassed in schools, which leads to 2008, California voters approve Proposition 8, which bans same-sex marriage in the state. 2009, Proclamation 8387, President Barack Obama dedicates June as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month. 2011, California passes the Fair Education Act, which requires that all public schools in the state teach about the contributions of LGBTQ community to history and culture. 2011, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is repealed. 2013, gender identity disorder updated to gender dysphoria in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. In 2015, this is a big one, the Supreme Court rules...
literally 10 years ago. 10 years ago. It's not that long ago, guys.
Obergefell versus Hodges, that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples by the due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. This decision legalizes same-sex marriage in all 50 states. Okay.
I do like that in this like scripted video that he could have edited. Earlier in the video, he said that same-sex marriage was legalized in 2013, and then later says it's in 2015, which it's 2015. But like he can't even be bothered.
Okay, so in 2016, 2017, Barack Obama tried to make it more inclusive for transgenders to be able to participate and not get judged. Trump comes up and he revokes it, but then here's what happens the following year in 2018. The White House announces that most transgender people are prohibited in the military, okay? Then in 2020, a letter from the Department of Education announces that the inclusion of transgender athletes in sports teams based on their gender identity is a Title IX violation. This motion effectively bans transgender athletes from participating in sports. So look, why are all these parents? I mean, you see in Glendale what's going on with the protesting.
How much money I watch
USC, we're sick and tired of
I watch eggheads play Fortnite.
And it's happening across the country. But how did all this material go into schools? Why are public school teachers teaching this stuff? It's pissing off parents. How do we get here? You have to know who's behind it all. For example, do you remember how we talked about earlier about...
Now, you might be saying, right before he said this, right? You might be thinking to yourself, you know, maybe this was just a wrong-headed but like good faith attempt to summarize LGBTQ history. Maybe someone could do that, right? Like, but then you get to who's behind it all. And guys, you'll never believe who Patrick Bet-David believes is behind it all.
About the California passing the Fair, Accurate, Inclusive Act in 2011, which requires all public schools in the state to teach about the contributions of the LGBTQ people to history and culture. That's kind of how it happened. It was something that passed. But more importantly, policies that...
Also, just to be clear, he thinks it's a bad thing that kids are taught about LGBTQ history. His position, and we've seen it on numerous of his episodes, is he believes that LGBTQ inclusive education grooms children into being gay and trans.
Make LGBTQ related material mandatory in schools are typically approved by state legislatures. In some cases, these policies are the result of grassroots activism, while in other cases they are initiated by government officials. Once it's a policy, it is then implemented by school district. And who was the most responsible for the California Fair Education Act? You ready? These organizations: Equality California, Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, Human Rights Campaign, HRC, National Center for Lesbian Rights, Transgender Law Center, And what do these organizations have in common? You ready? They have the same 3 donors. And do you want to know who's behind these 3 donors? I wonder who. Do you want to take a wild guess? You probably will get it right. Let me give it to you. First one is Gilead Sciences. In 2001, they became the first company to develop a once daily pill for the treatment of HIV and AIDS. That's one of the biggest funders. And by the way, do you know who's been a shareholder of theirs since 1999? Soros Fund Management. And in
Bingo! Bingo! He's doing the George Soros evil Jew conspiracy. That's right, buds. He's doing the anti-Semitism. But not only is he doing the anti-Semitism, he's also trying to say that George Soros funds pro-LGBTQ causes because he's invested in Gilead Sciences, and is saying that George Soros's contributions to these pro-LGBTQ causes are designed to infect more people with HIV, so that Gilead Sciences can profit off of the HIV and AIDS treatments that they have. Like this is like both conspiracy brained, anti-Semitic, and also just like wildly homophobic.
In
Also,
2015,
thank you for
Soros Fund
subscribing.
Management was one of the investors in a group that acquired a majority stake in Themis Medicare, a company that provides specialty pharmacy services to patients with HIV and AIDS. And Gilead Sciences.
By the way, I like that, like, Soros Fund Management, which of course George Soros personally oversees every single day of his life and personally directs in every investment that they do. And he's personally handling all of it. Yeah, also apparent in Patrick Bet-David's world, straight people don't get HIV or AIDS. Okay? This is just like the Nazis calling Magnus Hirschfeld the dangerous Jew transing Germans. No, GamerG, the parallel is perfect here between like the Nazi rhetoric from like the 30s and their targeting of Magnus Hirschfeld. He's literally blaming George Soros for encouraging children to trans and gay themselves.
Is a major customer of Themis Medicare. The second foundation is called the Arcus Foundation, and George Soros is a trustee of the Arcus Foundation and has donated millions of dollars to this foundation. And the third one, ready? The Gill Foundation, which, who do you think is a trustee? George Soros is a trustee and has donated millions of dollars to the foundation's work. A little weird. Why is this guy behind it? Why are you so concerned about kids and wanting to teach this to them? Like, how does it matter to you, George Soros? Why do you care so much? It's a valid question for parents.
Yeah, you know, it's a valid question for parents to ask and find an answer to. Don't draw the conclusion that I'm trying to lead you towards here in this video, which is that George Soros is targeting your children to make them gay and trans in order to profit off of the diseases that they will encounter via his corporations and investments. Don't look into, I mean, definitely look into that, but don't attribute any malice to me. I'm just asking questions.
To ask why he's funding this. By the way, as of June 2023, there are 6 states that make it mandatory to teach LGBTQ-related material in schools. Ready? California, Colorado, Illinois, Nevada, Jersey, and Oregon. So look, I don't know where you stand or where you're gonna.
Now, just have to say, it's like this is the type of absolutely manipulative garbage that Patrick Bet-David puts in his videos while like trying to portray himself as like, you know, impartial. Oh, I'm just a straight shooter, okay? He's like, as of June 2023, there are 6 states that make it mandatory to teach LGBTQ related materials in schools. Under the header, the Gill Foundation. You know, like, the implication here to his audience being that the Gill Foundation, like, made it mandatory to teach LGBTQ stuff in schools, and that George Soros personally made sure that that happened, and also personally profits off of all of those kids that are presumably being groomed by this LGBTQ inclusive material, and who then grow up to be gay, and in Patrick Bet-David's view and world, proliferate all kinds of queer diseases that need to be treated by George Soros's cure. That is the insane, like, yarn conspiracy map that Patrick Bet-David is creating for you guys to follow.
That make it mandatory to teach LGBTQ related material in schools. Ready? California, Colorado, Illinois, Nevada, Jersey, and Oregon. So look, I don't know where you stand or what you're going to be saying, but either way, you're probably like, what the hell is about? This is kind of uncomfortable to talk about this stuff. You're either watching and saying, I can't stand you doing this. This is why I hate valuetainment and PVDN. No problem. Or you're saying this, wow, I never knew about this stuff. I'm kind of interested in what else he has to say. I want to kind of look at some religions. If you were to look...
By the way, if you were wondering if he was going to say if anyone else was maybe behind, like, the increasing acceptance of LGBTQ rights, nope. Literally, that section of the video is done. That section of the video is done, actually. His only point in this video is that George Soros is behind the transing and gaying of America. And I need to remind you guys that blaming a prominent Jewish figure or a group of prominent Jewish figures is like a time-honored fascist tradition. You know, the Nazis did it, the Italians did it, the Russians did it. There were a whole lot of different formulations of this. But the thing is, he's just, he has some plausible deniability because Patrick Bet-David, Jewish, but also, and so he's like blaming, the bad Jew, which is another formulation of this. People like Ben Shapiro, put forward this idea of like the good Jews and the bad Jews. And the bad Jews are like the non-religious Jewish people, And that's essentially what a lot of people do to like kind of like skirt the accusation of anti-Semitism. And it's literally just half a step removed from saying George Soros is in charge of the immiseration of all conservative peoples. Is only half a step away from saying that a cabal of powerful globalist Jews is controlling everything for their own personal benefit, and like the eradication of the West or some nonsense, which is what Nazis say all the time. Like we're just like like half a step removed from that. You go from saying, oh, it's one Jew to it's a whole bunch of Jews. And then if someone's like, that's pretty anti-Semitic, well, they just respond, oh, no, I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't hate all Jews. I just hate the fake Jews. The Jews in name only, indeed. So just to be clear, that is who Anna Kasparian was sharing a stage with and laughing along with a minuscule amount of pushback. We spent 2 hours going over that video, and like the amount of time she was doing pushback was very, very slim. So it's just deeply disappointing. Also, we'll go through this religious section just for funsies here.
Look at which one is the most tolerant to same-sex marriage and which one is the least. If we have to say Muslim, that's the least tolerant. But the most tolerant is Catholics. And this is according to Pew Research. It's followed by Jews, then mainline Protestant, then historically black Protestant, then Mormons at 27%, and the least tolerant is the evangelical Protestant. And by the way, why don't we look at U.S. World News on what countries are the most?
So his stipulation here is that Catholics are the most accepting of LGBTQ people, Muslims are the least accepting, and that evangelicals are also fairly accepting as well. Okay.
tolerant to same-sex
I
marriage.
have no reason to dispute that necessarily. I'd have to look at more polling data for sure, but okay, let's go along with this.
Here's what you will find according to US News. If we look at these 24 different countries, you see at the top where it says totally opposed, somewhat opposed, somewhat favor, strongly favor, or total favor score all the way to the right. Here's what you'll find. Canada, 79. US, 63. But look at this. The country with the highest favorability score is Sweden with 92. Then it's Netherlands, then Spain, France, then Germany. You can look at the rest. The lowest, believe it or not, is Hungary in that list with 31. But if you go to other countries such as Indonesia, which is the largest Muslim country in the world, it's got the lowest score with 5 outside of Nigeria, and even Kenya's at 9. And
now, I do have to say here, he's trying to say Indonesia is a majority Muslim country, and look at how much they hate LGBTQ people there. They oppose same-sex marriage. 88% strongly opposed. Oh, he mentions Kenya and Nigeria here. Let's just look up Kenya religion. Oh, weird. Approximately 70% of Kenyans are Christian. That's interesting. What about Nigeria? Interesting. It's literally like 50-50 Muslim and Christian. Well, I guess he just Googled the religious makeup of Indonesia and wanted to use that to make his point instead of, looking at the other two highest numbers on this list and determining, like, literally Nigeria's 50-50 and Kenya is 70% Christian. So, I don't know, kind of causes his argument to break down a bit. Maybe there's like another factor here that's radicalizing like Indonesia, Kenya, and Nigeria. Like maybe Indonesia's been under the thumb of like an authoritarian far-right regime for like many years now, and in the aftermath of like a devastating genocide against left-wing elements of their country. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Just spitballing. Maybe a little bit of curiosity would have carried him a bit farther, but
Israel is at 36. It tells you most Christian nations are tolerant, and those that are Muslim nations are not tolerant for same-sex marriage. As if I haven't pissed you off enough with this data.
Like, again, the point he's trying to make is that Christians are overwhelmingly more tolerant of gays than Muslims are. Also, just out of curiosity, where was this data from?
Strongly opposed.
Views towards same-sex marriage across 24 countries. Let's see where this is from. Views on same-sex marriage across 24 countries. Okay, no, this is from 2023. Yeah. Nope. This is recent. It's from June of this year. I'll accept it.
Somewhat opposed, somewhat favor, strongly favor, or total favor, believe it or not, is Hungary, which is outside of Nigeria. Christian nations are tolerant, and those that are Muslim nations are not tolerant for same-sex marriage. As if I haven't pissed you off enough with this data that we're sharing with you, I'm going to share with you from Pew Research, and here's what it says. Unlike other Democrats, a majority of...
Why, my question is, why would polling data piss anybody off? I think his default assumption is that, like, leftists will watch his video and be very angry that he's saying, like, Muslim countries can sometimes be unaccepting of, like, queer people. But also Christian countries can be too. So, like, that's not really a bar or a distinction that is super applicable.
Black Democrats say gender is determined by sex at birth. So these are black Democrats. These are folks who were really needing civil rights at one point just 60 years ago. Now they're kind of...
Yeah, these are folks who were needing civil rights, but are now
saying civil rights is different than gay rights. If you look at this, here's what it says. So unlike other Democrats, a majority of black Democrats say gender is determined by sex at birth. If you look at this here, the yellow to the left is determined sex assigned at birth. The blue on the right is can be different from sex assigned at birth. If you look at the Republican leaning, you'll see 86 say no, your sex is determined at birth. 13 say you can change. But look at the white. 72% say it can be different from sex assigned at birth, but look at blacks. Only 33. That's a 40-point discrepancy, and blacks are 66% saying it's determined by sex at birth. You know what it says? Blacks are closer to Republicans than white liberals. They have a...
I wonder why this discrepancy might exist. Could it be the history of redlining and also the chronic underfunding of inner city education? You know, the systematic defunding of predominantly black areas of our country? Could it be the result of actual systemic racism? That's crazy. Because again, you have to have like a certain level of like education in order to be able to be like, oh, sex and gender, those are two different things. But like, you also have to be in a place that has like a curriculum to teach that. If you're not, like, then it's not really that surprising that you find people who are like, sex and gender are the same thing. What are you talking about? You know. Also, most people don't think about sex and gender. They just don't. They're just living their lives, trying to make sure that like they're able to put food on the table and a roof over their head.
40-point difference. Hispanics are at 44 and Asians are at 38, but blacks are the least tolerant on this topic according to Pew Research. Here's another one, man. Black Democrats are going to piss off a lot of the white Democrats when you see this, and this is purely their data. I didn't do this here. You can get upset at Pew Research and write a negative review about them because these guys are pissing off some of the wrong...
Yeah, you know, there's a not insignificant number of like black voters who would vote Republican if Republicans could stop being like racist for a nanosecond. You know, that is just facts. Okay? But you know, the African American community has learned time and time again that conservatives shaft them over and over and over legislatively and are specifically planning to strip them of voting rights. Like they know that. They have literally like a century and a half of experience learning that as a community. Not only that, but also like, you know, religious belief is deeply ingrained into you know, the African American community, and like that also has an effect on whether or not you believe like trans people are valid or not, you know?
People, watch this one. Democratic K-12 parents differ by race, ethnicity over what kids should learn in school about gender identity. Look at this here. Percentage-wise, I mainly want to look at the left one here, which is the green one, where it says someone can be a boy or a girl, even if it's different from sex at birth. Republicans say no. 9% agree with this. White said 64%. Yes, you can be different than what you were born with, but blacks said 30%. Do you realize blacks are only 21% away from Republicans and 34 away?
What he's trying to say is that so Patrick Bet-David is a Republican. You know, he's a conservative. He's deeply, deeply conservative. He's trying to say that black people, by and large, have not succumbed to the propaganda that afflicts white liberals. That's what he's trying to say.
From white Democrats. How weird is that? My experience on being in the military with my black friends, or selling memberships at Bally's, or working in the financial industry for the last 20 years with our African American community, the grandmothers and the mothers are typically very conservative. So this makes sense to me. And by the way, I just want you to watch this one video by this guy. You may know this guy's name is Malcolm X. He gave this speech many.
All right, I don't care about Malcolm X. Anyway, Patrick Bet-David is slime. He's obviously homophobic, obviously transphobic, and again, the fact that like Anna Kasparian went on his show, nodded along, laughed, and agreed with him on the extremism of LGBTQ people demanding rights and demanding, policies be changed so that we don't just die due to systemic inequalities. I find that pretty disgusting.